Hello, everybody, and welcome to our March edition of the Live of the RV Lifestyle and Repair Club. I'm your host, Dave Solberg. We are going to get started here. It's been an absolutely wonderful summer. We had a couple 70-degree days here this weekend, and this winter has been just amazing. So everybody's kind of getting that spring fever to get out and get their RVs earlier than normal. So we're going to start off. We have Norman that was from February, and he must have come in just after we signed off, but he says, I have a furnace that the burner sparks on a heating coil ignite and runs for about 15 seconds, and then it locks out. So there's a number of things. The very first thing I tell everybody when you have an issue with anything that is going to be using 12-volt power, like the furnace uses 12-volt power to open the gas valve, to spark ignite, run the blower assembly and everything. Make sure that you plug the unit in, first of all, to verify that you have power going to the battery. And I get this all the time. People say, no, my batteries are good. I know they're good. Well, if you're not plugged in and you have sulfated batteries, they look like they're 12.6 fully charged. The minute you turn something on, they just drop like a rock. And this is what I call gremlins too. A lot of times you'll be out there, this will happen, 15 seconds, it shuts off, locks off, you wait an hour or 2 hours, you try it again, it does the same thing, and then you take it to the dealer. When you get back, the dealer goes in and plugs it in and everything works fine. And it's like, well, what just happened here? Well, first of all, when the dealer brings it in, he's going to plug it into a 30 amp source. So he knows that you've got battery power. You might be doing this dry camping, not plugged into shoreline power. And the second thing is when the dealer takes it in, brings it inside, he shuts everything else off in that unit. You don't have the refrigerator running. You don't have the water heater on. You don't have all this other stuff that could draw power or draw LP. And then all of a sudden you don't have enough pressure in your LP system because of the regulator. So, there's all these variables, and I call them gremlins, that can be happening out there. So you really have to isolate the one component and look at how it works to be able to troubleshoot. So the first thing I always say is plug the unit in. When you plug that unit in, that converter, which we see back here, that WIFCO, or if you've got a distribution center that has it all in one right here, that is a battery charger, and it's going to do at least 13.2. And if the battery is low, it's going to be doing 13.6. So you've got good constant power going to that appliance. So that's the first thing I do. If I plug that unit in, and if it still does it, then we know we're going to look a little further into it. If you plug it in and it works, then you know it's your battery dropping like a rock, and you've got some problems with that battery, either sulfated or a lot of other things on that are pulling power, especially if you've got a refrigerator that is residential running through an inverter. It's going to pull 120 volt power through the inverter, but it's going to draw it from the battery. So first thing, make sure you got good battery power. Next thing then, that furnace, what happens to it is you've got your thermostat, and when you set it to 70 degrees or whatever it is, and it hits right about, it's plus or minus 2 degrees on these things. There's a little bit of wiggle room in them, but it closes the circuit is what it does. So it's like having two wires, and when all of a sudden it hits 70 degrees, it's like putting those together, sends 12-volt power down to your furnace, and it tells the module board that I need heat. So the module board, the first thing it does is it fires up the furnace, and it will run the fan. And then what that's doing, and I'm going to pull this out so we can see. Okay, so here is our furnace pulled out of the case, of course. So here's our intake and our exhaust. So it's going to pull interior air in, and that's going to be right from here. And what that does is that fan then is going to blow through this burner assembly and just get out any exhaust that's in there, any maybe LP fumes or stuff still lingering there. Just kind of clean that whole thing out as it does that. So then also what happens is on the front side of this, the fan is going to pull interior air. So this exterior air never gets inside your rig. It just goes in through here, out through here. So it never goes inside, so you don't have to worry about smoke or anything like that on the outside of it, just to purge that. So then as this fan blower goes here, it's going to pull interior air in and circulate it through the top. And normally what it will do is run over this burner assembly and come back out through your exhaust vents. And on this one, I think the vents were, yeah, so it's going to bring it in here. It's going to come through the bottom side of this and shoot out into the into your ductwork system, your plenum. But what happens is it has this sail switch right here. So if this sail switch doesn't go high enough, then it will not open the gas valve and it will not spark. Now you say you do hear the burner sparks on the heating call and it ignites. So then what it does is once it ignites, I think I got this upside down, I do here. So once this thing lights and ignites, right up in here, you can see is where your burner assembly is at, and you can see that there's a flame in there. So if it actually lights and the burner ignites in there, there is what's called a thermocouple, and that is just a little metal rod at the top, and that flame needs to hit that thermocouple, and that tells the gas valve and the module that, yep, I have flame. So I got a good airflow, sail switches up, I got flame, it's touching that thermocoupler on the top of it, and that says keep running, keep the valve open, because you don't want the valve open if there's no flame. Otherwise you'll fill up with LP on the inside of it. So that thermocouple could be bad, could be weak. It could be the flame is not high enough to touch the top of that, and that would be a gas pressure regulator issue. So the second thing I would do is I'd make sure everything else is off, the refrigerator's off, the water heater is off, anything that would have use LP. Make sure that that's off, see if that makes a difference. That'll tell you then if you've got low pressure. If it works when everything is off, then again, that tells you you've got low pressure in there. So then you have to you'll have to do a what's called a water column test, and they'll hook a pressure gauge up basically to this, and you need 11 inches of water column coming to this refrigerator with anything else on. So one of the things that we do, rather than going through that whole testing system, is turn on your stove. The first burner at the top should have a nice blue flame. Turn on the second stove top, then you watch it go down a little bit, should come back up and just regulate again if it's down lower or it's orange and kind of jumping around. And then do the third one, and then that'll kind of tell you if you got a good steady flame on all those burners. The regulator usually is pretty good. You're getting enough pressure to go through it because it's drawing pressure. And then try starting this. The other thing in here, if that is real dirty inside there, then also that flame is going to be jumping around and just not a good steady flame. So basically you're going to have to take this off just to make sure that or take this out and pretty much bench test it. And that's what I see a lot of times people will do. They'll pull it out and the bench test, it works fine. They put it back in and you get a bill from the dealership, you go out and does it all over again. Well, once it's in that compartment, it might be just enough containment and airflow restriction that it's, causing some problems. The next thing then is, so once this is going through here, and you can take this out and you will actually see the burner rod or burner assembly in the inside of this. And this is what's called a limit switch, and it's basically a temperature switch. If it gets over 170 degrees, it's going to shut off. So what can cause that is that you've got to build up too much heat in here. This could be weak. Another thing that could cause it is if you got any airflow restrictions, such as vents closed or rugs over some of your vents, or even kinked vents that, it may work for a while, but then all of a sudden you shove something under a couch or in a compartment, or something fell down and it's restricting airflow. You might not have enough airflow. You might have enough airflow in here to run the sail switch up, but when it gets back here and it's not getting out and through, then that heat builds up, and it could be as quick as 15 seconds, and all of a sudden it's saying, oh, wait, too hot, shut down, and goes into lockout. So those are the things that I would check on that furnace, just to make sure that, that you understand how it operates and some of those safety features and steps that will keep it from operating. All right, So Glenn says, how do I figure out if my DC side of my fifth wheel is working? My landing gear and nothing else seems to work when I unplug from a 50 amp service. So probably, not even probably. Okay, how do I figure out if my DC side of my fifth wheel is working? All right, we're gonna look at this distribution center. And so the way this works is you've got 120 volt power that comes in to our circuit breakers. This happens to be the main 30 amp on this unit here. And each one of these, this is probably the converter, which is your battery charger. You got air conditioners. You've got the 20 amp, I would believe, is an air conditioner. 15 amps, most likely the outlets inside. But this converter then charges your batteries, and your battery then brings up here, and this is your 12 volt DC system. So the first thing I would look at is my converter switch on? The next thing, and it probably is, because if it works when you're plugged in, that converter is doing your is giving you 12 volts and everything's worked when you're plugged in. And you said 50 amp service, so this is a 30, but it's very, very similar to that. The next thing I would look at is, do you have a battery disconnect switch? See, if you have a battery disconnect, normally it's going to shut everything off even when you're plugged in. But I've learned never to say never and never to say always when it comes to RVs, because they do so many things different. Look for a battery disconnect switch, usually in the step well or on the monitor panel. Make sure the batteries are connected. So then the next thing is you need to come up here and verify your power to each one of these in here. And some of the times what happens is, you know, if you've got power up here when it is connected to a Shoreline power, and then you unplug it and you have no battery power, that's when I would then take a multimeter and go right to your batteries and put it on your batteries on the DC setting side. And you see we have this one here, and I left this thing on, so it's getting real low batteries. Do I have another one up there? Yes, I do. Well, and I can just show it here, the way we sit here. But anyway, you should have 12.6 volts on that battery when it's not connected to Shoreline power. So when you're connected to Shoreline power, you should have 13.2, unless your batteries are really, really bad, and then you're going to have 13.6. So I'm gonna get this other one here. And we're going to hook up. I got a battery sitting back here that we've done a little bit of testing with. We had somebody come in and ask how we could get reverse polarity. And so I switched those around, and you can literally reverse polarity on these batteries. So if we hook this up right now to our amp. There we go. Okay, so I'm on the DC setting. I don't know if you'll be able to see this real well, but I'm gonna I have nothing showing. How come? Let's try. .6.4 on this, because this battery is completely shot. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug this in. That's going to start this up. What are we doing here? And we're not getting it. Okay, there we go. So let's disconnect this first. We're going to go. Okay, we show this has got 6 volts. So once I get it in the right spot, everything, 6 volts on that. See if I can get it to a. Let me see here. All right. Can you see that? I think so. All right. So we're going to plug this back in. You see where it goes up to 12. It's trying to get to 13. It's a little hard to see, 12 volts. So we're just going to leave that go. And so, like I say, if your battery is sulfated so bad that you unplug it and boom, there's nothing working, go out and hook up just a cheap little multimeter like this one, and you should see that it's also dropped. If it's below 11 volts, it's dead. And you're not going to get anything working inside that RV. So I think that you've got one of two things: either something disconnected in your battery disconnect switch or in the fuse panel here, or you've got sulfated batteries that are not working at all. So you should be able to tell using that multimeter on those batteries and plugging it in and unplugging it, seeing where the state of charge is. If they show 12.6, try running something like the leveling jacks and watch what that battery does. Boom, so if they got a surface charge and you go to try it, then nothing. One other thing that you're saying here, my landing gear and nothing else seems to work when I'm unplugged. Now, I did have a question that come in from one of our readers that said that the slide room, the landing gear, and I can't remember, there was one other feature that would not work when it was unplugged. And what he found is all three of those were Lippert provided components, and there was a fuse underneath the frame that they all came into, and it was just a reset fuse. So take a look at that too. If your interior lights are working and a few other 12-volt items, then it could be just that fuse that's doing it, and then it's getting power through the converter, which is probably in between the converter and the batteries. So Glenn says he's got a 2004 Designer fifth wheel. That's the one we just talked about. Michael says, when it comes to dewinterizing an RV, would it be fine to fill the freshwater tank and then flush it out afterwards? Yeah, and there are a couple products. What I typically like to do when I dewinterize, the first thing in the spring is just use this Thetford freshwater tank sanitizer. It's just a two-part system that you would take and do the cleaning first. And it just says empty the tank, add 1 ounce of concentrate detergent to the fresh water for every 4 gallons. So if you had a 50-gallon tank, you would do the 12 ounce. Fill the tank with water, run the diluted detergent solution through each of the faucets inside everything in there, then empty the tank and flush it out with clean water. Then you're ready for step 2, which is our sanitizer. And basically this one, see the back for additional instructions. Sanitizing, shut off all the incoming water lines, prepare a solution of 2 ounces of product for every 8 gallons of water, apply or circulate to wet all surfaces and allow the maximum contact of 60 seconds, and then drain the unit and return it. So it's just, this one's just a pretty quick 60 seconds, and it doesn't, I don't know if we got it's got sealed here. Just looking if doesn't say what solution it is, but it is corrosive, but it's supposed to be non-porous, not supposed to do any damage or any precautions to it. But I've used this active ingredient is ammonia chloride. Is the most active ingredient in it, other than water. So that's what I would do. I would, you could fill it up, but I just think it's a good idea. Some people use vinegar Some people will use bleach. A lot of people like this, the taste of bleach or the smell of bleach. A real small concentration, like a cup of bleach in a 50-gallon, or half a cup in 50-gallon, a cup in 100-gallon is usually sufficient, and that's not. I've checked with the DNR and with our local sanitary district, and they said that is fine to put that small of a concentration in a freshwater tank and then dump it out. So it's so diluted that it wouldn't cause any issues. Ginger Clark says, I have a 2006 Road Trek camper van. It was what I think to be the air conditioning unit on the top. Anyway, a little Carolina wren has made a nest on the top, sort of under the unit. I intend to let her stay until her eggs hatch, since I really don't need the van until later this spring. Will the nest cause any damage that I should consider? By the way, thanks for sharing all your knowledge. Well, you're welcome, Ginger. And it all depends on where the wren has created a nest, because normally the air conditioner is a completely sealed unit. So I don't have one here with me. I had one and we used it in a project, but you've got a basic tray that's sitting there, and then you've got a intake plenum that brings the air up, goes through an evaporator coil with the motor. All that is enclosed with a metal case over the top of it, and then the intake is on the inside of your rig. So then under the cover, if you pull that out, you see these grates on the backside. Under the cover in the back, you can visibly see the motor, the compressor, and the condenser fins on the backside, and all the tubing with the coolant that goes around there. That's all open, because as the air comes in, goes over the evaporator coils, goes down in, so all that is closed. Then what happens in the back here is, as that fan is moving on the backside of it, it's pulling air in from the backside of your air conditioner, and that coolant line can run almost 300 degrees when it's flashing the front. So they use exterior air to cool that and then blow it out to the side. So what I'm assuming is that your little bird friend has gotten into the back side of this and made a nest in the part where you can access from, if there was a crack of those small little vents, I'm sure they can wiggle their way into those. I don't think there's anything inside. Now, I have seen a local, one of our local people here that have an RV, last year started their RV up in the spring, turned on the air conditioner, and it snowed inside. And what had happened is a squirrel got in and started chewing its way through the styrofoam that covers that entire front area where the air comes in, and the sides of the evaporator coil. Now that is doing some damage, but I think what you're going to have is a nest. And once the babies hatch and they are all gone out of there, take that cover off. I think you'll see it's wide open in the back side of that, and just make sure all that's cleaned out. The only thing that could happen is that fan that's running in there in the open part of the backside. If the nest was in there, it could shred that stuff up and limit some of your cooling ability, but nothing in the front. So I don't think you have anything to worry about when it comes to that type of stuff. So then also, if we go up to the top here, we're going to look and see, just looking to see what our download for today is, or if Katie can pop that up. And so thank you for 2 thumbs up. All right, let's scroll down here and see, how do I seal the items mounted on the roof of my class B-class RV? So a B-class RV is a van, like the Mercedes, the Ford Transit. The old days, it was the Dodge and Fords and stuff like that. So it's probably a metal roof, and you want to make sure you get a silicone or a sealant that is designed for metal. And there's a variety of different ones out here. This one is pretty generic for Winnebago on the fiberglass stuff. Dicor has their lap sealant that's here. But again, since your unit is most likely a metal roof on that, you'll have the air conditioners up there. You might have a vent coming up for the black and the gray water tank, maybe a roof vent. So what they do is they're going to cut a hole in that, Some of them use a butyl seal around of it, but most of the time you want a self-leveling lap sealant, and that means it's going to just flatten out. If you do anything on the sides that is going to be vertical trim or seal, you want to use the non-leveling lap sealant, and it's kind of the consistency of toothpaste, so it's not going to ooze all the way down, but this stuff will smooth out. The big thing that I recommend for anybody that is looking to do some resealing up there, Dicor makes it. You can get it from any RV dealer, Camping World, a variety of sources like that, but make sure it's made for a metal roof material. It's self-leveling, and then you really need to take a look at the sealant that's already on there. Because what happens is you get days where it's 40 degrees in the morning and 65, 70 degrees in the afternoon. All that stuff expands and contracts differently. And that sealant needs to kind of move with that expansion. And as it dries out, and I don't know what year your Class B is, but it gets hard, it pulls apart, it gets brittle. You want to make sure you inspect that really well, because that is a point of moisture penetration. And once you see moisture inside, it's usually too late. And so if you start seeing cracking or separating or lifting up of anything, I would then take a heat gun and just put it on a low setting. You can get a very inexpensive one like that up there. Put it on the low setting and just take a plastic putty knife and just kind of smooth it out till you get to a good, you don't have to take it completely down perfect to the metal and clean all that up unless it's really, really bad and brittle. But a lot of times you can just kind of skim off and, see where it starts to give you a good surface to reapply some of the stuff that's designed for your material. Now, you don't want to do that on the air conditioner. The air conditioner is going to have a gasket underneath that it compresses, and you want no silicone around any of that, because it is designed to have two weep holes that when it pulls the warm, moist air in and over the evaporator coil, it's going to pull out that moisture, and it's going to go into the drip pan, and it's going to go out those holes. So you start putting silicone or sealant underneath there, you will block that up, and then you'll create a dam where it's going to actually work its way into the RV. So the only thing you want to do with an air conditioner is once a year go inside, remove the filter inside on the air return. You'll see 4 bolts in the corner that's holding that sandwich to that roof, and just make sure they're tight. They have a torque setting in it. I just normally have just gone in and done a real quick little, hand tightening is enough. But I've seen several units that nobody's done anything. That starts to break down. Water gets in there. The roof gets weak. It starts to sag a little bit, and then it gets even worse. And then you have a massive, massive problem. Greg says, that was Greg. How do I seal the roof? So Trishuna says, I'm having the same issue with my furnace that Norman had. I have a furnace that the blower sparks on heating call ignite and runs for 15 seconds and then locked out. So hopefully, Trishana, you were walking through our process here that we're doing. Whether you have a unit like that or if you have the all-in-one forced air, they both do the same thing. They're all going to draw air in. And so check your power, check your LP pressure, check to make sure that you have no vents blocked, and hopefully you'll be able to find out what the cause is. So Dwayne says, I have a 2021 Coachman Murata 35BH. Would the roof support solar panels, and how many panels could be installed? So the Coachman, one of the things about the roof panels is that when you spread them out, it's going to really extend the weight, so you don't have the direct weight on just one spot. It's going to be spread out along the side. And most of your manufacturers won't give you a weight limit on what the roof is. Now, some of them will. Some of them that are stick and tin, meaning they got wood framing on the top. But I do think the Coachman Murata has aluminum framework in almost all the areas. I would stay away from cutouts like the air conditioner or the roof vent and get off a little bit to the sides of those. Now, one of the things that, how many panels could be installed on a 35-footer, I would imagine, I've seen 4 to 6 panels up on those. But here's the thing to keep in mind about the solar panels is that you have to be in the sun to utilize those panels and get a charge. That seems pretty simple, but what a lot of people don't realize is if I put 4 to 6 panels up there and I'm going out boondocking, that's the only reason I got solar panels, is I'm going to be out remote camping and not have access to charge up my battery. So I want to do it with the solar power. So I have to be out in the sun. And that means that I am going to raise the interior temperature of that rig by 20, 30, maybe 40 degrees. And since I'm not plugged into shore power, I don't have an air conditioner. So my best case scenario would be maybe a couple panels up on the top, but then use a portable panel to be able to go underneath the sun, or excuse me, underneath the shade, and cool the unit down, but then put your portables out in the sun and angle them, because you're going to not get any charging power till that sun gets up to a certain angle to those solar panels. So it could be 10 o'clock, in the morning and stop at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. But you can put those panels at an angle where you can get, charging almost any time, during the sunlight time that's out there. So I would say, and the portable panels, I just got a set from Go Power that is a 200 watt panel. So if you put two 200 watt or two 100 watt panels on a roof, and you had the suitcase that you put out on the side, you got 400 watts of solar. And that unit, and I just brought it down here, weighed 32 pounds. So they're not like the old ones. It used to be the 100 watt panels were about the size of a queen bed mattress and weighed a ton, but they've really come down in weight. Price, I'm a big fan of the Zamp and the Go Power versions. We've put that on several. I've got 2 or 3 different versions here that we've used, and that they're really easy to store. They've got a nice case that comes with it. In fact, while I've got it here, I'm going to go off camera for a second. So this happens to be the 130 watt version. I got the 200 watt is upstairs. I forgot that I had not taken that out, but nice carrying case like this. The 200 watt's going to be just a little bit bigger than this. I would say probably another 6 inches and 3 inches on the side. But to put these up, it's real easy. So it's almost like putting up a card table. And then I'll get these out of the way here. So you can see we just bring the legs out, flatten them out. It's got its own charge controller. The Go Power has a different, the Zamp has a different charger than this one. It is, let me find my bag of tools here. I don't have it. Okay, it's going to be more of a plug-in. I don't have it here. Just had back-to-back shows January and February, and so a lot of my cool tools and my accessories are out. The Go Power one's going to be more of a pin style plug rather than this spade plug that you see right here. But they both operate the same. The only thing is the Zamp one is different. So is reversed in the polarity of it, in the way it connects. So you definitely want to stay with the same type, whatever you put on the roof versus whatever you put on the ground. I mean, you can put 4 of those panels up there, but again, this is so much easier and so much more efficient to be able to get charging and stay in the shade. And like I say, you just flip this up, put your legs out, and you're able to just keep that nice and angled towards the sun. And you see it's not that difficult when you don't have all this junk laying around here. But fairly lightweight, easy to put up and install, and it gives you the best of both worlds. Keep it cool inside and then be able to charge your batteries. Steve says, I have a 2018 Coachman Orion, and it shows that it is solar ready with the exterior plug-in. So all I should need is a solar package to plug in and charge up the system. Correct. There's a little more to it than that. Usually, and I'm not sure, with an exterior plug-in. So there's either, and I'm going to see if I can find my plugs here, my solar panels. There they are. Got all my junk hidden back here. There we go. Okay. Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. So most of the companies today are using ZAMP solar for the connection and the pre-wire. And the reason they're putting in a pre-wire is because if you want to put some panels up on the ceiling, up on the roof, and you don't have a pre-wire in there, somehow you got to get to those batteries. So you have to go through the roof, through a cabinet, maybe, you know, sometimes the batteries are underneath the steps in the motorized. It's a little easier on the travel trailers. They're out in the front, so you could just come down the front of the unit. But you see a lot of companies, RV, the motorized group is usually putting something up on the top, and they'll either put a plug-in like this that'll be up there, and that's why I was saying, you know, where ZAMP has the pin type plugins versus that spade we saw earlier. Some of them are just putting a cable up there and calling it solar ready, but you do say that it has the exterior plug-in. And Coachman Orion, so I'm not sure if that is a Class A or a travel trailer or motorized or travel trailer. Travel trailers, most of the manufacturers are putting just a single plug like this without this housing system on the side, and you can do a quick, easy plug in there, and then the wire goes into the battery box. With this one, the wire goes down into the battery box, but none of that's connected. So rather than just buying the a solar panel, you will need to get one that also has a charge controller, and that's what this is here. Most of them do. I know the ZAMP and the Go Power ones do, but it will be able to charge your batteries, give you the status of it. It will make sure it equalizes, because sometimes when intense sun's coming in, you will get a little different charging system than that, or power into it. And so you want also, if you're plugged into shoreline power, you want to make sure that that solar panel is not charging with your converter in there. So it will just help control all that, regulate it, make sure you're getting good even power, charging power to that. So, you know, like I say, most of them have that. Just make sure it's got that with it, and then you'll be able to plug it in and not worry about overcharging your batteries. And especially if you've got lithium, AGMs, you know, there's different components for that. So it'll tell you battery type, and you want to make sure you adjust that accordingly, because lithium wants 14.6 volts, where flooded lead acid and AGM wants 13.6 down to 13.2. Okay, Ernie says, when we replace an absorption RV refrigerator with a 12-volt compressor type, what is the best way to wire it? Can you use the existing wires or need to run straight from the fridge? Fridge is Vitrifico. I have not heard of that brand, but there's a lot of them that have come on the market now. If it has a Danfoss converter, that's a great compressor. That's a great compressor because it draws very little battery power. You can almost go 40 hours on a 100 amp hour lithium battery with it. The best thing to do is I'm pretty sure you're going to need to have a heavier gauge wire, because if you have an absorption refrigerator, that's one that will run on 120 volt power. So that's got the residential style Romex, what's called, you know, it's just the white 3-wire 120 volt wiring. It will have a 12 volt wire going to the refrigerator, which your new one wants, but it's probably going to be a very, very light gauge wire, because all it's doing is opening the gas valve and doing a spark and so forth. So I doubt, and I have not done one of these yet, but I'm pretty sure that 12 volt compressor is going to draw a lot more power than just opening a gas valve and sparking some stuff. So the first thing I would do is look at the wiring that you have there, and find out what gauge is that wire. Then look at that type of fridge. It will have specs in there to say you need X amount of certain gauge wiring going to it. And then what you want to do is you can go to the existing spot in the distribution center, because you will have a 12-volt fuse somewhere in there for that refrigerator, and then you just have to decide, is it the right size? And again, I don't know what that compressor driven refrigerator would have. So if you've got a small 10 and that's going to go up above 10, you might have to go with a larger fuse in there, which you can do. It's just making sure you've got the right power requirements. Okay, Jerry says, I have a 2013 Georgetown 377XL. The driver's side slide of the RV is coming in crooked. I have a Lippert hydraulic system that's not showing any leaks, but don't understand why one end is coming in faster than the other end. It depends on, okay, you said hydraulic, all right. So there are a couple things that could be happening with that. The Lippert system, it's either through the frame, or I think the hydraulic is all going to be through the frame system. So there is an adjustment on most of those. If you look into the videos we did on I think it was a 2016 toy hauler Raptor, we showed the adjustment points where the rods come out. There's an actual threaded rod that you can run that in and out. It's very possible that you have an issue with one of the rollers that are on the underside of it. That whole system's supposed to glide in and out smoothly, and if there's any resistance to it, it's going to start to create some of that misalignment. Another thing it could be is that the room itself has gotten warped a little bit, and just this last show that I went to, I had a question from a reader that came in that said that their manufacturer said do not use the slide room when it's in the retracted position. And I thought, well, that doesn't make any sense. I'd never heard of that. So I did some research, and it was a Winnebago. It was actually a Grand Design, but Winnebago owns them. And so I called Schwintech. That was the system they had. And they had not heard of that, but they started doing some research. And what we found is that if you have a slide room that the floor is not supported when it's brought in, that it comes in on the rollers and it just sits kind of free floating in there. If you go in and sit on that or stand on that floor, there's nothing to support it, and it will bow, and eventually it will get out of tolerance. And so it's very possible that your box has gotten some kind of issue with the actual alignment of it. I've always said, level the coach and secure it before you bring the frame out, or the slide room out, because if it's twisted, then you've got a twisted frame, twisted sidewall, and you're trying to run a room in and out that is going to have some resistance. So I even saw one yesterday where somebody had a room that wouldn't extend, and we talked about looking at everything around where do we find any resistance, and what they had found is that their rubber gasket seal around there had hardened to the point where it just was causing enough friction that motor could not do it, and the amp draw gets to a certain height and it stops. So I would say that, not knowing exactly what Lippert hydraulic system, go to lci1.com, go to their slide room section, find out what system you have, and then take a look at, is there any type of maintenance that you can do on it? If it's a hydraulic system with a rack and pinion, there's little gears that it will slide out on. I don't think that's yours, because that would be more of a power line system that Lippert bought, but it's a 2013, so yeah, it could be. If that's the case, then you might need to lubricate the bearings. You don't want to lubricate the gears, but there's bearings on the side of those gears that it rolls out on. So I would take a look at those, and just somewhere there's got to be some resistance in that, and there should be some alignment. Trishana says, I have a 1997 33-foot Tiffin Allegro. And so we were talking about the furnace, so I think that we covered that pretty good. Newton asked, Dave, have you heard of a recall by Jayco regarding attaching a gusset that holds and connects the reservoir to the frame? That reservoir holds the fluid that operates the leveling system in motorized RVs. There were just certain VINs and years involved, approximately 2017 or 2018 through 2020. I am not familiar with that recall, but I don't have a daily service center that I get those notifications and recalls in. What I would recommend is that you go to RV Business, and I believe RVIA even has a listing of all the recalls that were on it. You should be able to get a hold of Jayco as well. Thor has bought them out by now. But Thor has bought them out, but you should be able to get that. I have not heard of that, but again, I don't get those recalls, and unless they come in like questions from you that I can do some research, and I'll take a look at them too and see maybe I can run through that. But I do know that RV Business lists almost every recall that comes out, as well as RVIA. Jim has a 2018 Tiffin Allegro red with the bath and a half. When you flush the rear toilet after it has not been flushed in a while, it will stink. After a few flushed, the smell goes away. Do you know what might be causing this and how to fix it? Well, I guess there's quite a few variables that I would look at. So you've got the rear toilet is going into the black water tank, and you're flushing it, and it stinks. So if you got a front toilet that's not doing that, then to me it seems like something in that, maybe it's the vent in there. It's very possible that the black water tank and the gray water tank both have to have a vent, and some of them will go up through a wall and go up into the ceiling. The others, when they come up, the tank is located under something that's open, like a countertop in the kitchen or something else, and they use what's called a cheater vent. It just comes up, and it's basically just a siphon vacuum thing that allows air to come in so you can flush and not get a vacuum plug in it. And then but it's supposed to keep smells from coming back into the system. So I don't know why it would go away after a few flushes. It could be that cheater valve. It could be the valve up on top of the unit. The smell's got to be coming from the black water tank. So it's very possible too that you don't have the right treatment in it. I always recommend using the enzyme treatments, whether it is the Thetford toss-ins like this. They're enzyme based. There's also some liquid ones that I don't have the liquid one here, but the other thing I would recommend is doing some tank blaster. Just put a packet of this in, you fill it up to your black water tank, you let it sit for a certain amount of time, and then one packet will clean 50-gallon holding tank. And that really does a nice job cleaning all that out, and then making sure that you do use the right enzyme based. It's the good bugs, so you won't get the smells from like rotten eggs and that type of stuff. It's still a little perplexing on what, does it, I guess the questions that I would ask when somebody brings that in is, first of all, does it matter on what level the black water tank is? Is it brand new? You say that when you flush the rear toilet, it has not been flushed in a while, it will stink. Well, if it hasn't been flushed in a while, but is there still something in the black tank underneath? The front one doesn't do it, obviously. So what scenarios are you finding as you're walking through this? And how long is it between flushes? And is it to a point where, I guess after a few flushes, the smell goes away. So that means then you've got more in the tank. And so is it something, I can't see what is actually, what odor can come up through there when it's empty or the first two flushes. It's not like it's going to lubricate anything. because your toilet just goes straight down into the tank. It's not like your toilet at home where it's got a P trap in it that flushes and then holds water in that. It's an open tank. So that's kind of a tough one. But take a look at those things. So Elaine says, I'm still looking for those Phillip door hinges for my 2022 Born Free, but I would like your thoughts on Flex Armor spray on roof sealer. And I did, Elaine, if you go to etrailer.com and call them up, because I saw some hinges on there that said they were Phillips replacement hinges, or universal that would do several, and Phillips was one of them that was listed. So anyway, I would recommend go to eTrailer, take a look at theirs first. A Flex Armor kind of depends on the location you're at. There's a lot of products out there, like the Dicor has their roof conditioning program. I just came across RV Roof Magic, and I think it's probably one of the best that's out in the market. I'm not familiar with Flex Armor, but if you're going to be in areas where there's a lot of heat and a lot of sun, some of those that are a little more petroleum based are not going to last. They're going to start to really blister and peel, and you got a mess. $5,500 lifetime warranty, no caulking again. I would recommend taking a look at RV Roof Magic. We just had one of the writers for RVTravel.com, Sherry Sicard. We got her some free samples. Her roof was absolutely horrible, and she cleaned it. She got the fungicide that goes with it. That's important. You want to get all the mold and mildew off that roof. And then she went up and just coated it, and it looks absolutely beautiful. And I believe that one has a 10-year warranty on it. And you're looking at about $400 worth of product. You got to do it yourself. Or you could have somebody else do it. And hers was about 27-foot travel trailer. So again, I'm not familiar with Flex Armor. I've seen it out there. There's a lot of good responses on it. But again, if you get into really hot areas of the country like California, Arizona, that stuff is not going to last. The RV Roof Magic has a real good track record, and I would recommend taking a look at that product. Ed says, I have a Georgetown. Can you address when leveling, not having the wheels off the ground? In some cases, I have not been able to level without the wheels coming off the ground. I tried supporting the unit with Anderson levelers, but they broke due to the weight. What do you suggest for a 25,000-pound unit weight for leveling blocks? There are, the old tried and true one is a 2x10 square. I've got in fact, the guy right next to, just down the street from us, has a 38-foot bounder, I believe it is, diesel pusher. So he's got to be in the 26,000-pound range, and his driveway is pretty slanted. So I see he's got, his actually are not the 2x10s. He's got this massive 4x6. I don't know where he got it. It looks almost like a railroad tie. But I would say if you take, 2x10s and put two of them together on it, and he's got a little handle on the side so he can slide them in and out. Now, I have also seen where some people have used, and I can't remember the name of them. You said you tried the Anderson levelers. So basically, you got to find something that can go underneath those levelers that are underneath the. See, I've not been able to level without the wheels coming off the ground. So you tried supporting the unit. So you basically get something underneath those wheels that's going to hold that weight. So you're going to have somewhere in about the 10,000-pound range on the front axle. So that'd be 5 on each side, and you're running close to, I would say, at least 18,000 on the back. So you're 9 on each side of those, but you have duals. So you're gonna put them together. So I'll do some research on that. I guess I just, that's a tough question, since I don't do a lot of the leveling like that. And if anybody else out there sees something that they've used, please let us know. So Steve says the Orion is a Class C, and That was the 2018 solar ready. So I'm sure that they're up on the roof. Angie's looking at her watch. She's like, "You taking medicine or something?" You're like, "Oh, heck, I take my pills now." Larry says, "I've got a 2014 Four Winds and the batteries will not work the house lights. I've replaced the batteries and the switch and checked the fuses." So 2014, the batteries will not work the house lights. And I'm assuming you're talking about in the living room, dining room, and all those areas there. So you've replaced the batteries and the switch and checked the fuses. That one, it's hard to go blind to tell you exactly what it is, but I would say get a multimeter or get just a simple little voltage tester that you can check, because those are very small. So something just like this, and all you have to do is, hit to a negative spot and let's see if I can get this to work. Find a ground somewhere close to those lights and just pop this on. And this one's broken. I see, says we're not getting any power. So I must have a burnt out bulb on this. I haven't used it for a while. I'm having a tool issue today, I guess. But you should be able to either that or a multimeter and just go in and be able to trace back. Start at the distribution center where you've got the fuses down there. You said you've checked all the fuses. Somewhere you have to have an open circuit, meaning there's a wire has come off or whatever. So if you have power at the fuse, then you need to trace that wire and find out, and a lot of times what happens is you get something that just came loose on the first light and everything's ganged to that afterwards. And so then, you basically, nothing's going to get power going to it. So, that's not an easy fix other than just getting in and tracing that. And the problem you're going to have is 2014 Four Winds. You probably will not be able to get much of a wiring diagram at all from them. But it's a tough one. Jim Williams says the toilet is a macerator toilet as it does not sit above the black tank. Could water be standing in the hose from the toilet? Okay, that makes a little more sense than Jim was talking about, where he flushes a couple times and he gets a smell. So what a macerating toilet is basically, we called it a grinder pump, grinder toilet. So it doesn't sit over the black tank and it needs to push the sewage over to the black tank, sometimes even push it uphill. In cases of residential places like that, but it's basically just going to grind it up and then shoot it out. So what I would imagine is that you've got a toilet that, the hose is from the tank is probably bad, or even the grinder's not flushing all the way through the system. So I would say get a hold of the company that does that macerator toilet. And I don't remember Tiffin. So I would see, now Tiffin is a little better with their diagrams, so you might be able to get the exploded view of that macerating toilet and just see what that how it's plumbed, and that's probably what it is. Ernie says they installed my Vitro fridge and connected to the existing wires, and it is not getting below 41 in the fridge and 2 in the freezer. I have read some places say 10 gauge wiring direct from the battery to the fridge. Yeah, and that's again, I'm sure the wiring that you have that's going to that absorption refrigerator was a real low gauge, a low gauge wire. When I mean low, I mean a higher number. That's a weak wire. You're going to get a lot of voltage drop if you don't have something. This says a 10 gauge wire, and I would say that's I've read some places you should have specifics on that fridge that tells you exactly the gauge wire that needs to power that compressor, because it's going to do a lot more than just open a valve and spark. So it's got to have some power going into it. So last question then. We're at 5:01. Frank says, I appear to have a dead lead on my levels panel for the 2-3 reading on my black tank. Goes straight from 1/3 reading to full. Can that lead be replaced? It can, and I guess, you know, you don't say what kind of unit it is, but I'm assuming it's got the probes in there versus the stick-on kind that Winnebago uses, like Sealand. And so basically all it is it's a positive wire coming up, and then you have, real quick, set up just like this. So you got a positive wire coming up here that's got power to it. Once that fluid level arcs, it's going to do 1/3 up to here. It's going to do 2/3 and then full. So evidently either this probe is bad, this connection is bad, or this wire, and you should be able to replace that. One of those three. So with that, we are out of time. And it looks like we got all the questions answered. And I appreciate everybody coming out. Next month, we are April already. Wow, it's just flying by. So with that, appreciate everybody coming out. Make sure you send your questions in. Look for the videos that are coming out. And everybody have a great weekend. And thank you.